each of those programs are their own departments. You know, so it's a clear contradiction if that's the route we want to go, but we're going in a different direction.
Well, and the Provost official statement was they want to combine synergistic programs. Synergistic is one of those business words that's supposed to mean have things in common that work well together. And certainly there are some elements within cultural studies that are similar, that are dealing with some of the same issues. But we have 7 different engineering departments. 7 different engineering departments. And no one's talking about combining any of those. I can't think of anything that would be more synergistic than that. What they mean is that you can lump all the other studies into one category. People who aren't like us, we can study them in this department, make sure everything else has their independence. So it's an ideological shift in the university that's really dangerous.
I mean, and not to overemphasize the cultural departments, because they are also doing it in the English departments. So, you know, merging classics and Greek and making that all English instead of having it be its own individual major, merging a lot of the arts together. And so, you know, like I said before, things that are money makers. You think the things that you would go to school and your parents would be like, what job are you going to get with that major? Those majors are getting put together almost as if in some way or another studying one is equal to studying the other anyway. And so why not just put them all together, because we don't really see the difference. You know, even if you do the from the top down sort of method we're using, we don't see the difference. So
yeah, I mean, if you really think about the history of each of these majors, you know, and the time and effort it took for people to fight for them, you know, the dedication it took for people to even have an African American Studies program, let alone an African American Studies department. I feel like it's a slap in the face to all those people that worked hard, you know, for all these different departments. And I feel like it's very, very disrespectful. It minimizes the importance of them.
In addition to that, it's the fact that we're moving to a global world now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even think that's up for argue. All right, in the United States, we're more connected to everywhere else than we've been in the last 20 years. All right, and all these cultural departments have elements of the other world in them, the rest of the world, the real world in them. You know what I mean? So there's no way we can relate to the rest of the world and actually in a global context being truly for cultural diplomacy. Is like, at least we're geared to plead. You know, the institution of college promotes you to go into the world and be successful. You know, so if on the minute level here we don't promote diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, or we limit those, then how are we supposed to go out into the rest of the world and actually promote that? You know.
Maybe we should mention that Jazz Lewis walked in the room. Oh. That's the person you've been hearing speaking. Yeah. You want to introduce yourself and say what groups you're a part of?
Yeah, I'm Jazz Lewis. I'm part of Community Roots, Visible Children, EMI, STARE, and Human Race. Thank you.
And actually, that actually kind of moves me to the next subject of Dr. Grant Wisdom, because you mentioned how we need to be aware of different cultures. We need to understand how, you know, different situations are going throughout the nation and throughout the world. So what exactly is going on with Dr. Grant Wisdom? Because I'm actually confused on that subject.
Professor Grant Wisdom has been at the University of Maryland since 1993. She originally came as a part-time employee, then switched over to full-time, and never got on a tenured track. And she's tried, but she's been rejected from being allowed to go on the tenured track. And University of Maryland has its own set policies for that. She's been here for 16 years, and she's the only professor that is actively teaching now the politics of the third world. She teaches Government 100, which ranges all subjects, Government 282, which is the politics of the third world for the entire world. That includes, like, you know, Asia, Southeastern Asia, the Middle East, Northern Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, the Caribbean, Middle East, and even Native American issues, all right, and how they interrelate. You know, she teaches Government 309, which is politics, a U.S. foreign policy towards Latin America and the Caribbean, which focuses heavily on globalization in regards to NAFTA, CAFTA, FTAA, and things of that nature, heavy IMF World Bank type issues and how it affects. The big issue is that she teaches it from their perspective in comparison to most institutions teach it from the U.S. perspective outwards. So it's really positive. While hers, she shows more the negative light of how what we do has an influence out there. And some people in administration do not agree. The department chair, Professor McIntosh, who's the chair of the government policy department, he's the interim, that's not his set position. He's holding the position as of now. Said the department is moving in a different direction, you know, focus more on like quantitative theory, which is game theory, pretty much, heavy game theory, something that they can research, which goes back to what Chantel's like, make money, so you get research funds.
That's where you get research funding within the government department. Is you go study rational voting models, and that's how you get money. You don't get money by looking at U.S. imperialism. And really, the programs where critical thought is going on at the university, where we're being equipped with the tools to go out in the world and not just be a part of it, but to actually change it. That's what's being stripped. We're being left with job skills, and at the end of the day, we go to a bourgeois trade school. If all we're being taught is how to get a job and make money.
Well, I mean, to go on the realistic diversity plan versus the reality, and also, you know, how tenure works is a really big thing that students don't know. You know, there's a reason why a lot of minority professors have a really hard time getting tenure at this university. It's not just because they're ill-equipped, they don't produce enough research. You know, there's certain journals that are valued. And I think when we went to the, a lot of students went to the BSOS panel on diversity, how to maintain and retain minority faculty and bring in minority students. And one thing they're saying is it has to be a top 10 journal in order for it to be considered that you're publishing. Now, you can imagine that Caribbean journals, which is what a lot of Professor Grant Wisdom's articles are going into, are not top 10. One, because this is the U.S., and two, because it's not about the majority. So, like, the things that people are publishing, if they don't fit in these guidelines of what we consider academically excellent or academically sufficient, then you don't get put on the tenure track. And that has nothing to do with how good a teacher you are, or how good an article that you wrote, or how relevant or well-researched it is. That has everything to do with this sort of elite mentality. Like, you don't fit into our top 10 criteria, so sorry. No matter how valuable the information it is that you're researching is, like, get out. And that's the thing with the diversity plan. We have this plan to retain the faculty that are minorities on here that are tenured. But there are so few tenured minority faculty on campus that we're talking about 3 or 4 people. You know what I mean? Like, I've never had, I'm a psych major, I've never had a black professor, never had a Latino professor, I've never had an Asian professor. You know what I mean? Like, there are not a ton of minorities on this campus who, especially who don't teach within cultural studies. So.
And I think that's a big problem, especially with psychology. You know, psychology, first of all, has historically been used as a tool to oppress, you know, people of color. Second of all, you know, when you talk about thought, you know, the way our mind works, people's mind work in different ways, right? So is psychology at University of Maryland a Eurocentric psychology? Or is it, you know, maybe they should change that major to Eurocentric psychology, if that's what it's focusing on. If you don't have representatives from different communities who have different thought processes, then you can't really call yourself a true psychology department. That's how I feel. But,
well,
did you...
Chantel brings up a really important point about the way the university has been operating, or the way the universities as a whole within this country have changed over the past 30 years. Within the past 30 years, non-tenure track instructors, so that's adjuncts, instructors, lecturers, part-time faculty, or non-tenure track faculty like Dr. Grant Wisdom, have been hired at over 25 times the rate of tenured faculty, and that's nationwide. So we're depending more and more on people who are working in a situation where they have less and less control, they have less and less academic freedom, which is what tenure is supposed to protect. So it's no wonder we're stuck in this situation. And, you know, the university's been shifting this way for years now, decades.
In addition to that, in regards to like where departments are going, where majors are going, that is determined